to all of you here, all of you representatives of the media in Dominica, those of you listening via the radio stations in Dominica, and also the various media or social media platforms, wherever you may be listening or viewing from. Today being the 6th of November 2025, it gives me great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to this press conference called by the Electoral Reform Coalition. That is a movement, a grouping of people in Dominica of various groupings and of political affiliations. And so again, it gives me great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you. Just a matter of household protocol, as it were, we would ask that all phones at this time be placed on silent mode so that the proceedings can go a bit smoother as we continue here. In terms of a brief outline as to why we're here this morning, we will be hearing from the leaders of the registered political parties in Dominica in the names of Dr. Thompson Fontaine, that is the leader of the United Workers' Party, Mr. Bernard Ito, the leader of the Dominica Freedom Party, Mr. Joshua Francis, the Trinidad Law as well, the leader of the United Progressive Party, and also not here but gave his solidarity, Mr. Carlos Charles, the leader of Team Unity Dominica. The reason, or main reason we are here this morning is basically to highlight or bring to the fore certain issues or challenges that are confronting us as a people as it relates to the confirmation process that we as a nation have adopted in terms of it being law from the 19th of March of this year. And so just before I go into some of my opening remarks here, let me just say on behalf of the ERC and the people of the Commonwealth of Dominica, we want to empathize and stand in solidarity with the people of Jamaica and the neighboring communities on the passing of Hurricane Melissa as they continue to reel from the devastating effects of that hurricane. As a country, folks, we have been on this roller coaster ride for some time in terms of trying to make our electoral process a much freer and fairer one. The majority of Dominicans, I must say, we would have wished that we have started from a clean slate in terms of a re-registration effort or re-registration drive. However, the powers that be and the government got their way, and we now have as law the confirmation process approved and passed in Parliament on the 19th of March 2025. Now that that process has become law, we the people of Dominica, especially those of us who are part and parcel of the opposition, we have taken our time, read the laws, that is, and scrutinized it as well. And like everything in life, there are certain things that needs to be tweaked, needs to be changed, needs to be amended in order that that law, that confirmation process that we now have could be better in the interest of free, fair, and transparent general elections as we move forward as a people. Let me here say in a very unequivocal and unambiguous manner and tone that we, the opposition in Dominica, we are in no way, shape, or form not in agreement as it pertains to some of the wording or the principles or the wider framework as to the confirmation process. So we want to set that straight off the bat. We are in general agreement as to the process moving forward. But as I said before, it must be highlighted that after reading the laws, there are certain things that we believe that is not in the interest of free, fair, and transparent elections, and so hence the need for the three leaders of the different political parties here today in the flesh, and one absent in the name of Mr. Carlos Charles of the TUD party. We are all in agreement that some things need highlighting, and whereby we as a people can speak to it so that our process can be free, fair, and transparent. So without saying much more, people, I would like to welcome now to the podium none other than Dr. Thompson Fontaine, as he will be dealing with some of the issues as it relates to that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lofty, for this, and thank you for doing the honors for us this morning. A very good morning to my colleagues at the head table, Bernalito, the leader of the Dominica Freedom Party, and Mr. Joshua Francis of the United Progressive Party. Let me also say a very good morning to my fellow Dominicans that are here with us, as well as the assembled press, and everyone who may be listening at home. A few years ago, the government of Dominica embarked on a process of electoral reform that they claimed was aimed at primarily cleansing the bloated voters list and ensuring that our election process going forward would be free and fair. After Parliament enacted electoral reform legislation in March of 2025, the Electoral Office moved to spearhead an effort that we all hoped would forever cure the problem of stolen and fraudulent elections in Dominica. The Electoral Commission at first appeared to be reasonably balanced by putting forward a process for confirmation that we all felt could ultimately succeed in ensuring that those who were entitled to confirmation according to the legislation would be allowed to do so. We were, however, stunned and in total disbelief when, on the day before the process was meant to commence, the Electoral Office made a roundabout turn that has now forced the process into disrepute and threatens to prevent any real progress which the legislation was meant to address. The Electoral Office stood not on the side of democracy, not on the side of the people of Dominica, but rather shamefully took sides with a government that is desperate to cling on to power at all costs and is prepared to go at any length to accomplish its delusional goal. Whatever independence the Electoral Office previously portrayed was publicly sacrificed in order to stand with a repressive government that appears determined to once and for all erase our democratic tradition in this country. Let me remind the people of Dominica that the battle for electoral reform has not been without struggle and sacrifice. 25 individuals, including myself, were arrested, with several thrown into a dirty, smelly jail for several days, their liberties stripped, including our very brave women patriots. A young man was brutalized by overly zealous police, that's Mr. John Baptist Charles, a police force that appears bent on keeping this administration in office, while others were tear-gassed and otherwise denied their right to protest peacefully against a corrupt and delusional regime. Today, those of us who have been arrested have been dragged before the courts like common criminals and at great legal and personal costs, subject to the whims and fancies of a judicial system that one can only hope will protect our best interests. It is against this background, fellow Dominicans, that we come to you today to denounce the recent actions of the Electoral Office and to demand an immediate fixing of the system in order to get us back on the path to free and democratic elections in Dominica. On October 14, 2025, just one day before the confirmation process was due to begin, the Electoral Commission issued an SRO 39 that called for the use of a government-issued identification to include a passport, a social security card, and a driver's license to be used to confirm the voters' names on the list. What is shocking about this was the removal of the use of a birth certificate as a preferred means of confirmation. The Electoral Office is very well aware that the removal of the use of the birth certificate as a means of confirmation would immediately prevent thousands of Dominicans to confirm their name on the voters list, thus stripping them of their ability to exercise their fundamental human right in voting for a government of their own choosing. Thousands of Dominican voters are not now in possession of those IDs, and many, because of the same action of this government, which have reduced much of this country to abject poverty, has neither the means nor the motivation to go in search of a passport. This fact is clear based on the work of the Dominica Labour Party in going around the island and offering to pay for passports for their supporters. This in-your-face, naked manipulation of our voting process by the Dominica Labour Party is being supported by an electoral commission that was meant to be independent and free of political influence. The removal, my fellow Dominicans, of the requirement of a birth certificate now means that thousands of potential voters are vowing not to participate in the confirmation process. Most simply do not have the resources nor the desire to get a passport, quote, just to confirm. Let me remind the Electoral Commission that a passport is a travel document required for purposes of travel outside of Dominica, and no one in this country should be forced to obtain a passport for the sole purpose of maintaining their names on the voters list, by which, by the way, they got in through a birth certificate. Consider this, my fellow Dominicans. An 80-year-old Dominican who migrated to Antigua over 40 years ago and has since given up his Dominican passport can return to Dominica tomorrow and within 10 minutes be confirmed on the voters list, notwithstanding he's been away for 40 years, notwithstanding that he's no longer in possession of a Dominican passport. On the other hand, a Dominican patriot who has been in Dominica for over 80 years, who voted in over 10 election cycles, and who have suffered for the past 25 years under the regime of the Dominica Labour Party, will have their name struck off of the voters list. Why? Because they are not in possession of a passport and simply do not have the means or the motivation to acquire one. How can this obscene mockery of our election and electoral system be justified? Let me remind everyone that this same birth certificate is the very document that is required for registration on the voters list in the first place. In addition, without a birth certificate, you may not be able to acquire a passport or a driver's license. So how it is that the very thing that sets the basis for you acquiring a passport and a driver's license cannot now be used to confirm your name on the voters list. Let me be fundamentally clear, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Dominicans. The decision of the Electoral Office to do away with the requirement of the birth certificate is therefore neither practical nor reasonable and cannot be justified under any circumstance. In order to restore the integrity of the process and to ensure that the fundamental human rights of the people of Dominica are protected, we demand that the electoral office immediately and without reservation reinstitute the use of the birth certificate for the purpose of confirmation on the voters list. My fellow Dominicans, in addition to the now vexing issue of the process of confirmation, we are also faced with the willful violation by the same electoral office of Section 17, subsection 1 of the Registration of Electors Act 2025 that reads as follows, and I quote, "There shall be the continuous registration of persons qualified under this act to be registered as electors." Inexplicably, for several months now, the electoral office has prevented actively the registration of new voters in the Commonwealth of Dominica. They have gone further to move registration officers to become enrollment officers and have not replaced them. And they have made absolutely no arrangements for new registration in direct contravention of the laws of Dominica. They are violating the laws of the country. This blatant violation of our country's laws must stop, and it must stop now. This significant violation could even be used as a reason to overturn any future election results in Dominica. My fellow Dominicans, what we're witnessing has nothing to do with elections in Dominica, but rather we're reading from chapter 2 of the Dominica Labour Party's How to Steal an Election. A plot that has been hatched by the Dominica Labour Party and is now being carried out in full view of the Dominican public by a compromised Electoral Commission. Let us not fool ourselves. This has nothing to do with ensuring free and fair elections in Dominica, but rather a well thought out plan to keep this government in office against the overwhelming wishes of the majority of Dominicans residing here in Dominica. We therefore join forces with the other political parties and patriots of this country in saying no to the plans of the Dominica Labour Party and no to the unprofessional and law-breaking behavior of the Electoral Commission, who no doubt in my mind carry ulterior motives. We are therefore placing the Electoral Commission on notice this morning at this time that they must act, and they must do so now in order to prevent this grave and looming threat to our democracy and to our elections process here in Dominica. I thank you.
All right, thank you very, very much, Dr. Thompson-Fontaine, for some salient points raised here this morning as it pertains to why we are really here, especially you, the people of the media, which at the end of two other presentations by the leader of the Freedom Party, Mr. Bernard Ito, and the leader of the United Progressive Party, Mr. Joshua Francis, you guys from the media will be given an opportunity to ask questions relating to what you heard here this morning. Without saying much more, because we have time constraint here, let me move now to Mr. Bernard Ito, the leader of the Freedom Party, for some words.
Good morning everybody. Thanks for taking the time off from what I know is always a busy day to be here with us. But these are the things that shape our country, right? These are the things that are important. And we appreciate you recognizing that and being part of the process. The media is really the third arm of governance. And without you, we can't influence minds and influence policy. So thank you very much for being here. And as my colleague, Dr. Fonkin said, let me also thank and welcome my colleagues from the various parties for being here and for doing what we have to do as a united people, as a united opposition to do the hard work, the existential work that is necessary to maintain our democracy on this island. So thanks. Welcome to my colleagues and welcome to all of you. And of course, all the people following us live on Q and Kyrie and the various reports that will go out to them. So welcome as well to the listening public. Dr. Fontaine covered quite well the issues, the framework of the issues, and especially the issue of the documentation required to get reconfirmed. So in the interest of time, I will not hash on that very much, but I will add a few words, in that regard. What are we doing? I mean, what is it that we are doing in Dominica? What is this our state about? What is our nation about? What are we trying to accomplish here on this small island? What exactly are we trying to accomplish? I would hope we're trying to build a nation that is respectable, that is solid, that's progressive, that's prosperous. I would hope that we're trying to build a small Dominican civilization that generations down the road can be proud of and say, we did good work in our limited time here on earth to create someplace on earth where people who look like us have control of their destiny and did it the right way and created a society that has a quality of life to be admired on the world stage. That is what we should be about. That is what every Dominican should be aspiring to, and especially leadership. That is what we should be trying to create in Dominica. So in the context of that, how is what is happening now making any sense? What exactly is the logic to make it more difficult to simply have your name on a list and have someone point to that name and say, yes, this is me. I was registered a few years ago. It's still me. Here's my documentation. Confirm me. That is what this is all about. It should be a simpler process than getting registered to get on a list. I am 18 and so forth. I'm a resident. I've been living here for 6 months in this district and so on, so on. Several steps necessary to do that. That should be a more stringent process. This should be an administrative procedure so that you can confirm, I am on that list, I have been on that list, I belong on that list. And yet, what is being done now is to make that administrative procedure much more difficult. But that violates something very important in administrative law or administrative protocol, which is called administrative continuity. That basically says, in an administrative process, the original manner by which you got into the system, if you are simply then refreshing and confirming and validating information in the system, that process should not be more difficult than what it took to get on their original. That is a well-known concept of administrative continuity. And this concept is being totally violated because a grandma living in Girardale will have a much harder time than she did getting confirmed than she did to get registered. You know, there was a time in Dominica's history when you had to have property, income, and interestingly, you had to be literate to vote. All these were seen as violations of individual civil rights, and as we progressed through time and history and we became wiser as a society and a civilization globally, it was recognized that putting undue restrictions to a citizen's right to vote is a violation of one of their basic civil rights to be involved in the process of governance, to hold their government accountable. And so are we going backward now? That we are now placing restrictions to violate the civil rights of people who were already on a list. It's a matter of civil liberty. It's a matter of a struggle akin to the struggle that Black Americans went through in the 1960s to say, remove the poll tax, remove the testing requirements, remove the wealth requirements. Because a person's ability to vote should not be dependent on the depth of their pocket. Your wealth should not determine how and when you vote. But in this process, that is exactly what we see us reverting to. Because it's costing money, and I'm not talking trivial amounts of money, hundreds of dollars. And if you want to get a new social security card and you have a little back on it, maybe thousands of dollars to be issued a new one. Hundreds of dollars for a passport. If you don't have a driver's license, $800 to get trained and to go and take the test. So we're talking significant amount of monies. The wealth, in a very real way, not in a metaphoric way, not in a symbolic way, not in a rhetorical flourish way, the wealth in these difficult economic times may well tilt the balance and purify that voters list down to one that the government prefers. Now one might say, well, it will disadvantage everyone in the same way, all parties. That is not actually true. Because recognizing the barriers that have been placed, this government is actively working to overcome those for those preferred voters. Of course, those who support it. And so you are setting up a whole regime of issues that you are basically eroding the civil rights of Dominicans. And that is what it's about here. So I've said this, and as I said, Dr. Thompson covered this pretty well. I won't go into much more detail on this, but I think the point that is being made here is we have a fight on our hands to assure the civil rights of Dominicans in this new era as this government continues to put barriers to a level playing field in the voting process. But there are other issues, and I'll talk to some of them briefly. The issue of the locations and the staffing of those confirmation centers is also a problem. All right. There are numerous reports of people going in to register and confirm and say, wait a minute, is this not a Labour Party office? Or is this not a Labour Party establishment? And refuse to go in there. And some of them, for superstitious reasons, they've heard that macaque or people putting things on people with red this and that and so on, and say like, no, I don't want to be involved in that. Now, what are they going to do to me in there with their sacrifice and so on? Of course, that is hearsay and that is just, superstitious stuff. But you cannot discount people's real actions that arise from what they believe. And so putting those confirmation centers in areas that are well-known Labour Party offices and so on is inexplicable. And people certainly simply will not comply with that. And it's simply bad administrative practice. Who is governing the process of making those decisions? That's the question. Who makes the decision to put a confirmation center in a Labour Party office? And what are the ramifications of that, and why is that not being addressed? And so we want that addressed. The other issue is, and we have to investigate further, and there's, we're still getting the information on this, but it certainly appears that the people who have been hired to do this confirmation appear to be predominantly Labour Party supporters. And we're asking the question, why is that simply chance? Is it simply a chance that somehow the chief elections officer has interviewed people for these jobs in an open process, but somehow statistically it ends up with 90% of those folks being supporters of the government? So that is the kind of question we want to ask. What is the statistical reality that you end up with that distribution? And why, if not by chance, why? Especially given the fact that the Electoral Commission is supposed to be a bipartisan institution with balance of both government and opposition forces out there. So you would think that in the interest of building a good, fair process, that the Electoral Office would follow the same principle of having a balanced set of people there to verify and validate that everything is operating as it should. So these are the fundamental issues that we face as a country. Why is it that repeatedly this government tends to erode every institution that is supposed to be placing limits on the government's power to act arbitrarily? Why is every institution being captured by this government to allow it to rule then in an era of chaos and confusion? Because the more chaos and confusion and the lack of transparency that you have, is the better it allows a government, a set of people, to do what it is that they wish to do. So that's the context that we're in, and the final thing I'll say about this is, we cannot allow that, though, to discourage the people who are opposed to this government to get confirmed. We have to get out there and make sure that our people are confirmed, because if we do not, what is going on now will bake in an advantage to the government for the next decade. And if we are serious about democracy in this country, calling on queue is fine, but let us demonstrate our civic duty and go out there and get confirmed, and we are going to be playing, all of us here at this head table, a leading role in pushing that process and motivating and organizing and galvanizing our people to make change in this country. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ito. You just heard some sentiments, that is, from Mr. Ito, the Dominica Freedom Party leader. As I said before I call on the next speaker, just to reiterate, this press conference is joint, it's one collaborative in nature, and so I know we in Dominica, the majority of us has been calling for unity among the forces, and so today is a demonstration of just that right here in terms of the utterances coming from us jointly as to the ways, some of the things that needs to be rectified, amended as it were, as we move forward as a people in our electoral process. That means the way by which we elect governments to serve us. Time is not on our side, so let me now call on the leader of the United Progressive Party, that is Mr. Joshua Francis, a practicing attorney in Dominica. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning to Dominica, those who are listening, both here and abroad. Good morning to the media house. And good morning to my colleagues, my brothers, the leaders of the respective political parties who are present here, the leader of the United Workers' Party, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, and the leader of the Dominican Freedom Party, Mr. Bernard Ito. I understand that the leader of Team Unity, Dominica, ought to have been here, but for some reason his absence in the flesh. Nonetheless, I will take the opportunity to acknowledge his support for this joint venture here this morning. This morning, we are here in pursuit of saving our democracy and getting social, economic, and political justice in Dominica. We are here because of the hard work of entities and individuals in the opposition family in Dominica. This government has shown resistance to facilitate fair and just electoral processes in Dominica. And had it not been the hard work of the main opposition political party, the United Workers' Party, the Freedom Party must be credited as well, CCM, and persons in their own individual capacities, we would not have been here today talking about the confirmation process. Maybe we would still be choked with the bloated voters list. And on that point, I want us to acknowledge the efforts of all those who showed up for protestations, the last being March 19th, 2025. I want to say kudos to all the protesters. In the eyes of some, they may be disruptive, but I am confident in the eyes of most Dominicans, they are social and political heroes for standing for democracy and freedom in Dominica. Having said that, I stand here today to lend support to my brothers, both Mr. Ito and Dr. Fontaine, as far as championing the cause for a fair electoral process in Dominica. And having said that, several reports have come from confirmation centers in Dominica where persons who went to confirm their names on the voters list were confronted by several issues. And I wish to address maybe 3 of them. It has been brought to my attention that there have been name changes without going through the due process. Meaning that persons who went to the confirmation centers with their valid IDs, whether a valid passport, a valid driver's license, or a valid social security card, would have had a different name to what is on the voters list, whether it is a clerical error, whether it is a spelling error or not, and that changes were being done without due process. The Electoral Commission, in its regulation, has provided prescribed forms to deal with situations of that nature. And therefore, we are appealing to all confirmation officers and the Chief Elections Office that this ought not to be taken casually, in that if someone's name is different to what is on his ID versus what is on the voters list, it may necessitate the intervention of a justice of the peace or an attorney, because person A is and supposed to be person A both on the ID and on the voters list. And therefore, in situations like that, given the nature and the facts surrounding the different names, we are concerned that the confirmation officers allow these voters or these electors to fill in the necessary forms, and where necessary, to get the assistance of an attorney, whether it's on an affidavit of identity or statutory declaration, to make the necessary correction on the voters list. Another issue that has been brought to the fore, more so from a commissioner, is that there is a disparity in the name in the form 31 to what is on the electronic platform. The commissioner asserted that on form 31, the physical form, it calls for current address, whereas that information, when being inserted on the electronic form, meaning that it's being placed on the computer, it provides for address of the polling district. My understanding is that form 31 in the physical form should correspond in parallel to what is on the computer or the electronic platform, for the purpose of consistency and to avoid any doubt, to remove any blur. After all, we are asking and looking towards transparency, and therefore it is the duty of the Election Commission to ensure that all its forms are in compatibility to what's on the physical form to what's on the electronic form. Furthermore, and I heard Dr. Fontaine as well as Bernard Ito mention about the continuation of registration. It is correct that the Registration of Electors Act, Section 17, says that there shall be continuation of registration in Dominica. Section 18 of the said Act provides for exceptions. To date, we have not gotten any declaration from the Election Commission providing justification for suspending registration of voters as we speak. And therefore, I do support Dr. Fontaine by raising the question whether that may be a violation of the election laws. Because as you know, voting or registering to vote is a constitutional right. And the law says there shall be continuation, except in certain cases. There is no disaster, there is no war in Dominica, and therefore it is not justified that we have seized the registration process. Nonetheless, in the interest of fairness, I did speak with the Chief Elections Officer in that regard, and she has drawn to my attention that the law did not provide for any transitionary period from the old law to the new law, given that under the old law there were no voters' ID, and therefore there was no system to capture the pictures which are required right now, to capture certain forms which are required right now. And with the new registration process, the Chief Elections Office would require time. In view of the circumstances, She said that her office is working speedily to recommence registration of voters as of the end of the year. I want to make the point that this is a reflection that the Electoral Commission may not have been ready to facilitate the confirmation process. Because at that level, given that for so many years we have been massaging that issue, we have been ventilating, we have been exhaling the issue, it is rather unfortunate that the continuation of registration has to be suspended because the Chief Elections Office is not ready. Let us hope that all efforts are being made to ensure that at the end of the year, that Dominicans who wish to register to vote will get the opportunity to register to vote. And on that basis, I want to urge all Dominicans to take the confirmation process very seriously. Some of you are aggrieved with the system. For many years, you would have sought and continue to work towards a change of government. If you do not confirm nor register to vote, it means that you will be denying yourself an opportunity to add to the value to create a change in Dominica. Furthermore, I want to extend a point which both political leaders before me mentioned, and that is in respect to the SRO 29, which reversed the requirement of a birth paper alongside a passport ID and an affidavit to allow persons to confirm their names on the voters list. It is rather unfortunate that the Electoral Commission would reverse SRO 27 and replace it with SRO 29, making it mandatory that Dominicans require a valid license, a driver's license that is, a valid social security card, or a valid passport to confirm his or her name. Given the current economic situation in Dominica, we're hearing a cry. We do not have the data to say exactly how many Dominicans do not have one of these IDs. But it is clear that a significant number of Dominicans do not possess none of these valid IDs to facilitate confirmation. And if this were to persist, it would mean that a number of Dominicans would be denied the opportunity to confirm to vote, which is a form of disenfranchisement. A tool that was used to weaponize the justification for this government not to support a complete re-registration process. Now that we have the confirmation, once again, it appears that certain individuals want to play dirty. And in playing dirty, who are the people who have been affected? Poor people who cannot afford to get a passport. Look at the demographics. People who are indigent, people who are unemployed, people who are elderly. Therefore, we are basically working to disenfranchise the vulnerable people of Dominica, the income poor. And therefore, in the interest of consciousness, I'm appealing to the Electoral Commission to do what is right for God and for country, and to reinstate the requirement for Dominicans to be able to confirm their names on the voters list using a birth certificate. Really, it is unreasonable and it's unjustifiable to make it so hard for a Dominican to confirm his or her name on the voters list. If anything, whilst the Electoral Commission may be concerned about standards and international best practice, it must not lose sight on what is fair, what is just, and what is equitable based on our own given situation here in Dominica. We must always be minded that whatever decision we take as a statutory body, as an entity, or as an individual in public office, that it must be based on our own circumstances. The reality is there are many Dominicans who do not possess a passport, a driver's license, or a social security card. And therefore, the appeal continues for the Electoral Commission to do what is in the best interest of Dominica. I further assert the point in respect to what Mr. Bernard Ito mentioned. There have been reports of certain confirmation centers being associated with activities of the Dominica Labour Party. We must be careful that in our actions at that level of the confirmation process, that we do not appear to be biased and we do not create doubts in the minds of Dominicans. After all, this is a confirmation process which should be fair and transparent. And just the mere appearance of the meddling of the Dominican Labour Party in the confirmation process has demoralized a number of Dominicans, such that some are saying they will not go to certain centers to confirm because they have been so injured by the Dominican Labour Party over the years. There are many Dominicans who continue to suffer, resulting from the failures of this government. And they have taken this confirmation process very personal. Whilst some of us may be affected and we are discouraged to confirm to vote, I want to lend support to both other political leaders here this morning that all Dominicans should confirm to vote. I myself, I made it a duty to confirm to vote, and I must say that the process was simple. The process was simple. And if anybody would have a problem, feel free to contact an attorney or contact the Chief Elections Officer, who I've had several conversations with in respect to some of these concerns which have been mentioned here today. So all in all, the call is for Dominicans to take this very seriously. Do not wait for the last minute. We have a country to build. We have a country to save. We want to advance our cause. We want every Dominican to enjoy a better life. We want to elevate the standard of living. We want to increase the value of our democracy, our institutions, especially the Electoral Commission, which constitutionally is supposed to be independent. So, let us take this very seriously. If you have not confirmed to vote, please make it a duty. Find out where is your confirmation center, walk with your valid ID and get confirmed. But I will go on further to say that please check on your brothers and sisters to ensure that they confirm to vote. And if there is a neighbor, a friend, or a family member who does not have an ID, please talk to one of us to see how we can facilitate an ID for that person to confirm to vote, whilst the Electoral Commission further consider its decision in preventing the use of birth certificate for the purpose of confirmation. So this is the full extent of my contribution. I'm hoping maybe Curtis would have a question when we come to the question and answer section. He likes to ask questions. I'm hoping that he will ask us questions to benefit the average Dominican and all the other media personnel here. So once again, thank you and a pleasant day to Dominica.
All right, thank you very much, Brother Joshua Francis, the leader of the United Progressive Party in Dominica. Just to reiterate the point that was made before by Josh, Mr. Carlos Charles, leader of Team Unity Dominica, was also contacted. He's not here in flesh today, but he endorsed fully what is transpiring here today. Let me take this opportunity once again to thank the listeners of Q95 at this time and all the other radio stations if they're listening. Emo News, thank you very much for your very arduous work. DNO, you are represented here. Thank you very much as well. Just to say here before I open the floor for some questions, all what we have said here today will be put in a letter form and will be sent across to both the electoral office and also commission for basically addressing some of the points that these three leaders address here today in terms of just trying to tweak, trying to amend, trying to rectify some of the issues that are confronting us as a people as we go through the confirmation process. Without saying much more, I think we have 5 more minutes of lifetime. So questions, comments from the media. Welcome.
Two questions. Mr. Francis, you spoke earlier as to, if you have any problems, you should refer to the Chief Election Officer to have it corrected. But she's one of the problems that some persons have identified. So you cannot speak to somebody who may not be able to speak to your concern. And secondly, how far, I heard Mr. Thompson Fountain, Dr. Fountain speaking to, that this must stop. Are you guys willing to file an injunction to correct that process? I'm talking to the three of you on the table. How far are you prepared to go to stop this? What? An injunction, maybe?
I certainly think an injunction should be on the table. I don't think any options are off the table. Once we fully explore the legal implications of this and we fully explore the law and have some legal conversations with the right people, and an injunction is justified, I believe an injunction will be filed, should be filed, and most likely will be.
Dr. Fontaine?
Just to add that the threat to our democracy is such that nothing should be on the table. No option should be on the table, including legal challenges, including civil disobedience, including agitation to Dominicans here, international bodies overseas. In other words, we are throwing everything at this because we understand, as I said in my presentation, that this is a sinister plot by this administration. You know, something that could be done so simply, something that could be done without anybody even realizing it is done, and be successful. Why it is that this administration is going through so much lengths to ensure that they disenfranchise a significant portion of the Dominican population. That is the question the Dominican public should be asking themselves. And as such, we should not limit our responses to that affront to democracy in Dominica.
Okay, I have a question. So specifically for Mr. Ito, you mentioned the principle of continuation and specifically under sort of administrative continuity, right? I wanted to know, because some of my question has already been answered, but specifically about that principle, what legal basis do you believe you have in terms of a case? Or specifically, are you looking to ground your legal challenge around that principle you mentioned? And if not a legal challenge, what is your sort of tact in terms of getting that particular thing across? It sounded like something of substance.
Yes, I would couch it less as a legal challenge because this is more of an administrative principle, good governance principle, administrative practice in bureaucratic enterprises, and just good governance principles. So it's not necessarily a legal challenge, but the question is, the assertion was made that this is for best practice, right? That this revision from SRO 27 to SRO 39 was that it facilitated best practice. The argument was made, we looked around and we want to implement best practice in Dominica. But that best practice violates what is standard best administrative practice. So in the context of that, we have a contradiction and we have a violation of the principle that they're trying to use to justify this. So in that context is what is couched. It's also, if you look at the Commonwealth best practices in terms of what is recommended, it clearly says there's several clauses that addresses that a voter should not face a higher obstacle barrier to get confirmed or refreshed or whatever term you want to use versus the original process that they went to get on those lists and get registered in the first place. So if the argument is we are going after international best practice, then they are clearly violating several best practices that are universally applied. And the best practice of saying, well, America requires such and such ID violates the principle of common sense. You have to do, as was mentioned, as we've discussed, what makes sense in your context, in your society. And to require that high level of documentation in Dominica's context is a violation of common sense and absolutely is not the best practice. So simply them throwing the term best practice around, we're showing several instances where they are violating the principle of what is common sense and what is international best practice in terms of administrative procedures as well as Commonwealth practice.
Greetings everyone, to the head table. Very commendable the efforts that you have executed here today. Of course, with the collective objective of ensuring a free and fair system. I'm not so sure if this is a question or rather a comment, but it borderlines along that. I've been reliably informed that there are members of parliament and operatives of the Dominica Labour Party that are threatening in terms of the NEP. In such case, notably within the Salive constituency. And in saying so, saying that if they do not get confirmed, that they will be fired or removed forthwith from the National Employment Program. So what I see is in the usual format of the DLP utilizing its National Employment Intern Support Base to just continue to justify its claim to power. So I just thought that you'd want to be mindful of and aware of that as well.
Thank you for your question. Yes, Mr. Giles.
Yeah, good morning to everybody. Of course, warm good morning to the head table, and I must compliment the leaders of the various political parties. They have articulated the issues that I believe that people need to, know about. Another issue, and again, it's not a question, but also a comment, which is important. For example, you have a community in the Roseau Valley like Mont Prosper. Mont Prosper, as we know, have been, doing your registration and all of that in Mont Prosper. On the list that was presented for confirmation, Mont Prosper Primary School was mentioned, and it is listed as a place to go confirmed. All of a sudden, that has been extinguished and it no longer exists. I have a problem with that because you cannot tell me that the people of Mont Prosper have to now leave, elderly people, and the same discussion, to go to Trafalgar and or Loden to get confirmed. To me, that is what you call political windball. That's an off-break. Because we all know that Mont Prosper has been supporting, is a great supporter of the opposition. We know that. So what do you do to them? You send them somewhere else to confirm. And I believe all those things need to be rectified, and that person should have access to be able to easily go to confirm, because that in itself, that process must be adopted. All right? Thank you. Just a comment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles.
Yeah, I can just respond to this.
Yeah, I was just going to tell Mr. Charles that the West Indies team is in need of your expertise, Charles. They need an off-breaker.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Thompson, yes.
Yeah, this is exactly why I said in my presentation that we're looking at chapter 2 of the DLPs, how to steal an election. When you have examples like this, these naked examples of trying to disenfranchise an entire village, knowing full well that if you put an onerous condition on them, most likely they will not. And most likely they are probably a supporter of the Labour Workers' Party, and therefore will not impact the government. That is what we are talking about. When you turn Labour Party offices into confirmation centers is another. When you hire across Dominica, the only people you can find to be enrollment officers, Labour Party operatives, is a third. This is wrong. These are the problems that we are facing. We have people today who are refusing to go into Labour Party offices to confirm. And again, we are calling upon the electoral office to change those centers and also to make sure that every single village in Dominica has a place to register. It is not fair. You are putting a burden that is deliberate, and that is why we continue to insist that the electoral office has taken the side of the Dominica Labour Party. And having said that, let me just say a big thank you to the two commissioners, Mr. Wayne James and Mr. Hilary Shillingford, who continue to fight so valiantly against all of the pressures to ensure that common sense prevails and that we have a commission that acts on behalf of the people. But the Dominican public should not sit back and take this lightly. Dominica is happening right before our eyes. Read the book, read the chapter. It is happening before our eyes, and we have to make everything within our powers to ensure that we prevent this occurrence from going
Thank
forward.
you.
Dr. Fontaine, good afternoon to you. What then is we've heard your concerns, what then is your message to supporters of the UWP as far as the confirmation process is concerned? What do you say to these supporters at this time?
What I say to my supporters is that those who can, those who have the IDs to go ahead and confirm, we support the confirmation process. That's the law of the land. We support it. So we want to encourage those who are able to do so. But bearing in mind, as I said, a significant number of our supporters are not able to do it. Not a significant number of our supporters in one prospect cannot now go or refuse to go to Trafalgar to register. So what we're telling our supporters is that we'll continue to fight to reinstate the birth certificate, but until then, they should be encouraged to support the confirmation process.
All right, any more comments, questions from the media? Okay, Mr. Francis?
Yes,
We'll take about 1 or 2 comments and kind of bring it home.
right. I wanted to respond to the comments emanating from the Kalinando territory in respect to persons being threatened to confirm by Labour Party operatives. Let me say that every Dominican has a constitutional right to decide whether he or she wishes to confirm. And no force, no person, no entity, no political party has the right to cause somebody to confirm under duress, force, or undue influence. And should any Dominican find himself in such a situation, be at liberty to contact myself and any other right-thinking leader in Dominica who will stand for your cause. If you have been facilitated to confirm, ensure it is voluntarily. For those who do not have a national valid ID and you are getting assistance to do so, for example, if a Labour Party operative visits your home and says he or she is going to assist you to get one of these valid IDs, it is okay. But in getting an assistance does not mean that you have a leash around your neck and you must support the Dominican Labour Party. A matter of fact, this time around, if the Dominican Labour Party wants to give you money, wants to help you out, and you need it because you're vulnerable, you're in need, you can take it. But just ensure that you're not obliged to support the Dominican Labour Party whenever that election is called. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Francis. Mark, any final word? That's it? All right, I get a sense that that is it from the media. Let us just now thank you guys again by calling on Mr. Johnson Boston, who is the chair of the ERC, to bring it to a close. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lofty. I think you're doing a fantastic job in sharing this. I want to thank the media for coming out and to take the message further from here to the listening public. Also, there are a number of persons outside of Dominica, the Caribbean, the world, who are paying attention to what is happening in Dominica and to see whether we as a people are asleep and don't understand the value of our democracy and voting. And I'm so pleased that the leaders have agreed to have this press conference because people say, what your fellows are doing? I'm not hearing from you all. And I made the point, even on Matt this morning, confirmation or registration of electors to the voters list is not a competition among parties. It is a voluntary exercise, and the Constitution makes provision that you, as a citizen, once you attain 18, it gives you the right to register. There is no law that you must vote. It's your choice, but to give you a right to register. In some countries, you have laws that if you don't register, if you don't vote, there's some penalty, but in Dominica, we don't have that law. So the confirmation process should be as easy as possible to confirm, because once you're on the list, you're way past 18, okay? So in that case, I think we will continue to push it on because we believe it's an important issue, not a partisan issue. It's an issue of liberty, it's an issue of democracy, and it's an issue of a united Dominican. If we go to the point where I confirm my people because I have resources and you find resources to confirm your people, we are just dividing the people into partisanship, and that is not good for our country. So again, thank you so much. I thank the leaders very, very especially for showing up and the presentation made by them. Excellent presentation. And I hope the people of Dominica will recognize it, not as UWP, Freedom, or the UPP, but of course as we, as a people, working together for common sense to prevail in our democracy. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.